Welcome to the Extra on KRDO News Radio, the show that connects you with the issues and topics and people that are important to you. And we love having her on the show. Catherine Hammond, Hammond Law Group is here. And it's, we were talking off the air, but this is a very, for some, touchy subject. Part of being prepared is planning your funeral.
Yippee.
I know, right? I mean, it's not something we're like, yay, today I'm going to plan my funeral. But it's also something, though, and as you and I have talked about, it can create some problems, too.
Right.
For people when the time arises. So why is it so important?
So most people don't want to deal with planning for any part of their mortality. So estate planning people tend to put off. That's why 7 out of 10 Americans have no estate plan in place. But within the world of things that relate to estate planning, funeral planning is the thing that most people never do deal with because it's so touchy. Like, that's really admitting that I'm going to die someday. But when we do die, which all of us are going to do at some point, our families are reeling. Typically, they're in shock.
Yeah.
They're grieving. And there are so many things that have to be taken care of within a matter of hours. And in a state of shock, I mean, typically if somebody's married and their spouse passes away, we expect their surviving spouse to be in a state of somewhat disability for months because of the shock and the grief. There are so many things that have to be done that put stress on the family, sometimes cause all kinds of family fights, and then cause all kinds of lasting problems, and people's legacies don't get to be honored. So it's a really, really important thing to think through, and a lot of different elements go into making sure that it's going to be as easy as possible for your family.
Well, and like you were touching on, I mean, usually, like you said, when you're planning a funeral, you are in disbelief, shock. I mean, you don't quite know. Do you know their wishes? Well, as you said, it can lead to family problems because when they want to be buried. No. Ashes. You know what I mean? And it leads into this big thing. And, they wanted the big, no, they didn't. They wanted an urn. I mean, it can create a lot of problems.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah.
And even over little things like which poem to read at the memorial service.
Yes.
All kinds of things. So it's incredibly helpful. As we were just talking about, most people spend months and months, maybe 6 to 12 months, planning their wedding.
Right.
But their funeral, we only have a matter of hours to plan all of those details.
Right.
And so at least having a plan, making your wishes known, and making sure that there's somebody who knows those wishes and is able to carry them out, and then making sure that there's money available for your final expenses. Those are the things that are super helpful to your family when you go.
And that's why this is all part of estate planning. I think a lot of the shock is the cost.
Right.
Funerals are not inexpensive.
Right.
They can be expensive. And so being prepared in your estate planning and having your funeral planned ahead of time and the expenses already taken care of, I mean, would really help your family. And you say that there are 2 main questions when you're planning this that you need to go over with your family.
Yes. One of them is, what is it that you want for your final wishes? And that encompasses burial versus cremation. That encompasses a lot of different elements that we can talk through. And then the other side is making sure that there's money available to pay for your funeral. And we'll talk through why a lot of people think that they have that covered with money in a life insurance policy or in a bank account or something like that.
Right, okay.
That money is actually not available for your funeral. We'll talk about why and what you can do to make sure that there is money available for your funeral.
And you apparently did a whole class. You do classes frequently, Catherine.
Yes.
And you recently did a class about this, and you said everybody was just like, thank you.
A huge thank you, which I didn't expect to talk about people's death.
Right. Let's talk about planning your death. Not in that way.
Right.
Don't take that the wrong way.
Yeah.
So let's dive in first. So are there some general guidelines to begin with when planning your funeral?
Yeah. So let's talk through. I mean, they're big picture. Who you are is your legacy, and so how do we honor who you are. And I think back to the memorial service for Paul Richards, dear friend and colleague of yours. And at his memorial service, there were some people who spoke who were really able to capture with great clarity the essence of who Paul was in a way that I will carry with me related to Paul for the rest of my life.
Absolutely. Yes.
It was beautiful. And so when somebody passes away, capturing their essence can really help perpetuate that legacy. Now, there are some people who plan all kinds of crazy things. As I was doing research to do this class, we came across a variety of ways that people wanted to be honored. One guy was a motorcyclist, big biker.
Right.
And he decided that he wanted to be buried on his bike. In full garb. So he had a coffin custom built. It was glass, large enough for him on his motorcycle to be sitting on there. And he was buried, and you can see pictures on the internet if you want to Google this. You can see pictures of him with his helmet on, his leather jacket, his full outfit on his motorcycle.
Wow.
Buried that way. That was important to him.
Wow.
So not everybody wants something that specific.
Right.
But who you are. And so as far as the general guidelines go, planning for the details of your funeral and memorial and burial or cremation, there are some general things that you want to make sure that people know. Your religious and spiritual preferences. Do you want flowers or not? If you're going to be buried, what kind of clothing is important to you?
You know what? And it's I'm glad you brought that up. And both you and I, having gone through loss and having to deal with these decisions, it's amazing to me how much the clothing becomes, and I don't want to say an issue, but you literally like that jacket or that jacket, that dress or that.
And was there conflict in your family over things?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, just over the clothes.
Right. And so if we go ahead and plan those things out ahead of time, imagine what a gift to your family to not have to guess which one you wanted. And it seems like such a little thing, but there's big pressure because we want to honor this person.
Right.
We really
and
want to honor
legacy.
their legacy.
Yeah.
So the clothing, and then who do you want to know about your wishes? Who do you want to carry out your funeral wishes? And
that's a good general guideline. And again, as you said, that just goes back to who you are. What is your legacy and how do you want that to be remembered? And when we come back, we're going to take a quick break, talk about obituaries.
Yeah.
Still very important part of planning.
Yeah.
We're going to have more with Catherine Hammond when we come back on the Extra on KRDO News Radio. Welcome back to the Extra on KRDO News Radio. Talking with Catherine Hammond, Hammond Law Group. Always great to talk with her. Estate planning, getting ready to retire, getting your family ready for and prepared for everything, including your funeral, which is what we're talking about today, funeral planning. And Catherine just recently did a class on this, and the response was overwhelming. So that's why we thought we'd bring parts of the class to you, right? Or on here.
Yes.
So let's talk about obituaries. Again, this can be a point of contention if you're not prepared.
Absolutely. And so there are several different details that you can map out ahead of time that take all of the thinking and the potential conflict out of your family for when they're dealing with your loss. And
right.
Sometimes it's very sudden. So with the obituary, things to be thinking about is where do you want it published? In some locations, that's easy. In Colorado Springs, there aren't a lot of different newspapers.
Right.
But still online, there are some different places where your obituary can be published. Who do you want to write your obituary?
Yeah, that's big.
Really important thing. People might be wrestling for that kind of control after your death, and everybody might think that they have the best version of what you would want. So another option is to go ahead and write the content yourself now.
Yes.
Choose the things that you want to focus on and make sure that you leave out the things that you don't want to focus on.
Right. Absolutely.
So, and for some people, there are those things.
Yeah.
That they don't want to focus on.
Yes.
Just take control and write your obituary now.
Take control and just write it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Whatever family history sometimes for, let's say that you have even adult children, they may not know some of the family history points right off the top of their heads that one would normally include in an obituary.
Right. And you have to do research and try and
Right.
figure out it has this many survived by, you
Right.
know.
And typically we're trying to do this the day after somebody passes away, and it's really overwhelming. Go ahead and have all of that stuff together, and go ahead and choose a picture that you want to go in your obituary.
Right.
Otherwise, your family is going through all the old photos, trying to find the one that they all agree on as the one that you would want to memorialize an entire lifetime in one picture.
Right.
So
that's a lot. And it is a lot, again, and also trying to help you avoid any conflicts moving forward.
and that's maybe the most important part of this, right?
Yeah, really, it is. And let's talk about charitable donations.
Yeah, some people really want charitable donations to be made when they die. And so if that's important to you, go ahead and communicate that. If so, name those charities. Sometimes people, give to 10 or 20 charities on a regular basis over their lifetime, particularly retirees. I see developing a long list of folks that they write checks to on a regular basis. Selecting the one or two or however many charities you would want donations made to when you pass away, and communicating that, and then communicating if you want charitable donations to be made in lieu of giving flowers
Or
something like
gifts
that.
or, yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, again, people are guessing.
Right. And then that big bouquet shows up and
Right.
you're like, wait, didn't want that.
Right.
Okay, so planning memorial services, funeral services, there actually is a lot that goes into that.
There are a lot of different details. First, do you want to have a viewing or a wake? Some people want that. Some people don't. Some people really don't care. And maybe we should back up a step. I have a dear friend of the family who she was friends with my parents since long before I was born. And she recently passed away of pancreatic cancer, lived in another state. And, I kept in touch with her through her process of moving toward death. And she decided that she did not want any kind of memorial service. She did not want any gathering after she was gone, because she didn't want a bunch of people standing around crying, talking about her. And I didn't say anything to her because she gets to choose exactly what she wants. But the memorial service is not for us. It's for your family.
Right.
And so absolutely we can express our wishes, but isn't it even more of a gift to let our family do what's going to help them go through that grieving process? What do they need most? So keep that in mind.
Right.
As
If
you
you're
make
deciding
big decisions like
right.
that.
Yeah,
Like,
no, I'm
I'll
not
come
going to have
back
a
and haunt you
mystery.
forever
Right.
if you gather and cry about me. So do you want to have a viewing or a wake? What kind of music do you want? Some of us have songs that are really meaningful, and they might not be the ones that people would necessarily already know about being meaningful to you. Are there certain poems or scriptures or readings or prayers that you would want? Again, the things that are meaningful to you might not be things that your family or other loved ones would know about. Who do you want to say your eulogy?
Yeah, who's going to eulogize you?
Right.
There again, I'm just kind of pointing out could be a point of conflict.
Absolutely. And what if there are particular things that you would hope that somebody would mention about you, or things that you want to set out there that you don't want mentioned?
Right.
And some people have specific wishes about that. Is there a particular budget that you have in mind, a recommended budget? Some people don't mind if a bunch of money is spent. Other people, it's really important that it be frugal. And then is there a particular style? I had some clients at one point who said, a client who said, I really want my memorial service to be in the style of an English pub.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they thought that would honor who they were.
And it just kind of people relax and yeah.
Serve
like
some
it.
beer.
Serve some beer,
some
relax.
pretzels.
Right, exactly.
Maybe
like
it's
that.
fish and chips, I guess, if it's an
Right.
English pub. Yeah, so the things that would help us remember you and all of the beautiful things about your life and what you brought into the world.
And this moves forward to like a burial or cremation, which, if you don't express that to your family and your family, what your wishes are, I mean, that creates a problem.
Right. Again, because of conflict, and it's just a hard decision to make.
Right.
And I've had a number of clients over the years who have said, I really don't care. You can do whatever with me you want. But still, that's forcing that decision that I can't make
onto somebody else.
Right. Right. In a moment of grief and shock,
right.
potentially.
And, for some, I'm sure because of religious beliefs or whatever, there are some already, predetermined burial or cremation. But for those that aren't, lay it out for people.
Yeah.
Because, again, you're also dealing with costs, too.
Exactly.
Cost to cremate, the cost to bury.
Right.
So.
Right. So, big decisions there. And then whether you're being buried or cremated, what kind of container do you want your body in?
Right.
Do you want to be in an urn if you're cremated? Do you want your ashes spread? Obviously, if you're being buried, there are a lot of different kinds of containers that we can use to be buried. I mentioned the guy who had the custom coffin built so that he could be buried on his motorcycle.
Yeah.
Most people wouldn't choose something like that. Some people want a very simple pine box. Some people want a casket that's fancier. And then, do you want your organs donated? Some people want to donate their entire body for medical research.
Right.
That's a really important thing to be communicating ahead of time. The organ donation in Colorado we can do through our driver's license.
Right.
So that's great.
Right.
But again, express your wishes to your loved ones.
And then moving on to reception, again, sometimes if it's a sudden death or, you know what I mean, like we've talked about, you're dealing with emotions and grief and shock and disbelief. And then where are we having this?
Right.
Am I hosting this?
Right.
Or are you hosting this?
Or is it at the church?
Is it at the church?
No. Mom hated that church.
Right. I mean,
didn't you hear about the fight she had with the pastor the week before she died?
Yeah, plan it out.
Right.
Do you even want a reception?
Such a gift. Exactly. And what kinds of people do you want invited to that?
Absolutely.
Do you want alcohol served? Things like that. Oh, and I forgot to mention with the burial versus cremation, where do you want your remains to go? Do you want to be buried at sea? Do you want your ashes spread on a mountain? Do you want to be on the fireplace? Where do you want to be? So not on the fireplace, on the mantle.
Right. Well,
Probably
you might be right there. You never know. Okay, and when we come back, we're going to talk about how to pay for your services. And again, they can be expensive.
Right.
So being prepared to handle that. We're going to talk with Catherine Moore next on The Extra on KRDO News Radio. Welcome back to The Extra on KRDO News Radio. Welcome back. We're talking with Catherine Hammond, Hammond Law Group. And, okay, it's not a fun topic, but we're trying to be real about it. Right.
And it makes things a whole lot easier for your family if you at least spend a few hours planning things out now.
For your funeral.
Yeah.
And I know, again, it's not a fun topic. It's not something everybody wants to, okay, I'm going to plan when I die. Right. But
just do it.
Get it done.
Go back to living your life.
So the one thing I think that really crops up and surprises people, especially and like we've talked about, most people are in obviously a lot of grief, denial, coping when they're planning funerals, and then the costs pop up.
Right.
And that can be another layer of shock.
Exactly.
So plan on how to pay ahead of time, right?
Exactly. So 90% of Americans think it's a good idea to prepay for your funeral, but very few people actually do that. Most people are thinking that when they die, the money in their bank account or their life insurance policy will be able to pay for their funeral. What people don't realize is that those things are not available to pay for your funeral.
It takes a while. Yeah, everything goes into.
Well, right. So even if I have a POD on my bank account, a pay on death beneficiary, so that the bank is instructed to give the money as soon as I die to somebody else, there has to be a death certificate in order for that person to get it.
And you have to wait for the coroner.
Right. And that can take weeks in El Paso County. Same thing with life insurance. You have to have a death certificate to prove that somebody has passed away before the life insurance will pay out. And so you go to the funeral home and they want to be paid today. In fact, they would like to be paid yesterday. They won't wait until tomorrow or next week for that payment. They will not wait. They've been burned too many times. It makes a lot of sense.
Right.
So somebody had better have some cash available, one of your family members, or better have a credit card if you haven't prepaid for your funeral in some way. So super, super helpful to take that stress off of your family and pre-fund. So there are a couple of ways that you can do that. You can do a prepaid funeral. Go to a funeral home. Most funeral homes will do this and pay. You typically get to lock in today's rates. There are some drawbacks to doing it that way. If you do it that way, then you've contracted with one particular funeral home.
Right.
If they go out of business or if you move out of state, you might be out of luck.
Right.
So you could put a joint owner on your bank account. I never recommend that because then whatever happens to them happens to you. If they get divorced, if they get sued, if they get into an accident, there goes that bank account. So putting a joint owner on your bank account won't solve it. The other option is doing what's called a funeral trust.
Okay.
So it's a prepaid special life insurance policy just for funerals. And so you prepay, you can put, let's say, $7,500 or $10,000 into this policy. You earn interest on an annual basis for the rest of your life. And then within 24 hours of your death, we don't have to have a death certificate. That funeral policy will pay out in its entirety directly to whatever funeral home your family chooses. And then if there's any extra money there, let's say you funded it with $10,000, but we're able to do everything for $7,500, that extra money goes back to your family, so it's not lost.
That sounds like I'd never heard of a funeral trust before. Mm-hmm. That's very interesting. And it's
flexible. You can use it anywhere. You don't have to worry about if a particular funeral home goes out of business or if you move out of state.
And of course, Catherine, if people would like to talk to you more about this and estate planning and being prepared, how do they get a hold of you?
They can call our office, 719-520-1474.
Okay.
Or go online, coloradoestateplan.com.
That's right. Sorry. Okay, I wanted to jump ahead here because I actually want to give some extra time. And yeah, we're kind of having a squirrel moment here. But Catherine has brought in some very important information. The new healthcare reform bill, American Healthcare Act. And it recently passed the House, and it still has to pass the Senate. But you have kind of looked at this and broken it down. And there's really some important information in there that everybody needs to be aware of. And especially some of this can affect seniors.
Right.
So what are let's start with some of the biggest things that you've pulled out, and then we'll take a quick break and then we'll kind of break it down more.
Yeah. A couple of big things. The American Healthcare Act would allow insurers to charge older consumers premiums based on their age, which could be up to 5 times the price of insurance that younger insureds would be paying. Huge deal.
Premium 5 times.
Yep.
Based on your age, it could be 5 times up what somebody else is paying.
Exactly. So that's one area of concern. The other one is that we would have a per capita cap for Medicaid so that each state is only getting a set amount of money per Medicaid beneficiary. And so that ends up being equal to a Medicaid cut that's like billions of dollars over a 10-year period. So we would be cutting overall Medicaid coverage. And so the ways that could potentially affect seniors is also an area of concern.
So we're going to talk more about this when we come back in just a couple of minutes. We're talking with Catherine Hammond, Hammond Law Group, next on The Extra on KRDO News Radio. Welcome back to The Extra on KRDO News Radio. We're talking with Catherine Hammond, Hammond Law Group. You have been watching and paying attention to the American Healthcare Act. And like we were talking about, the reform bill passed the House, has to pass the Senate. But there were in looking at this, Catherine, some big changes that people needed to be aware of. And a lot of them can affect seniors more than others. And one of them was the premiums. The premiums significantly can become a challenge in this new act.
Right. Under the American Healthcare Act, they can raise the premiums for seniors, and that could make health insurance completely unaffordable. Most seniors are living on a very limited income.
And you were saying 5 times, it could be up to 5 times based on their age, what someone, say, in their 20s or 30s pays.
Exactly.
The other thing was looking at Medicaid.
Right. Making that a budget based on per capita Medicaid recipients, which ends up being a cut to Medicaid. So there are a couple of areas where people need to be thinking through. I mean, legislation is going to be changing all the time.
Yes.
Healthcare will continue to change. When we have the next president in office, it will change again. And so the point is making sure that we are well prepared.
Exactly.
Make a plan that is flexible for all of the changes that will come, because it will keep changing.
So what are some
Worst
good
case
tips?
scenario. So on the financial side, a couple of things. First of all, make sure that your investments are solid. Really recommend that people work with a CFP, somebody who can really help you map out income versus assets and retirement income. And then also talk to a long-term care planning specialist to make sure that you have a plan for if you need any kind of care.
Okay.
A lot of us have something debilitating where we need care in our home or need to move into an assisted living or nursing home. Community-based Medicaid is the Medicaid where I'm still living at home and I get some support coming in to help me. That enables a lot of seniors to stay in their home longer rather than having to move to a nursing home. Community-based Medicaid is one of the kind of more optional Medicaid programs that I would expect to be one of the first things that Medicaid would cut if they have a financial cutback. If they're having to cut services, community Medicaid could be one of the first things to go. That means people who used to be able to live at home with support, now their only option is to move into a nursing home or move out of their home in some way so they can get that support. So talk to a long-term care planning specialist who can help you figure out how you would pay for care, particularly if Medicaid is not available. And then on the legal side, there are a couple of things. It's really the overall principle is making sure that there is somebody who is authorized to take care of your money and juggle things around if necessary if you become incapacitated. So financial power of attorney, healthcare directives, and then ideally consider a revocable living trust. That can be really helpful in terms of somebody having the option to do some Medicaid planning. And your living trust would need to specifically authorize somebody to do Medicaid planning to juggle things around to help you get qualified for Medicaid.
Interesting. So it's quite a process and a lot to think about. But hopefully, and even moving in previously, this was stuff people were thinking about and being prepared for. Like you said, it's constantly changing.
Yep, exactly.
And of course, they can reach out to you and your attorneys to help better understand this.
Yeah, we're here to help.
And I know you guys do workshops, and we just have a couple minutes left. The great thing about Catherine is she loves educating. You love educating people.
Yeah.
And you have classes and workshops all of the time that people can take advantage of.
We do.
So what are some of the workshops that you have coming up?
So we have some basic estate planning workshops coming up in July. We don't have any other workshops that particular month. A lot of people are on vacation, but we have some basic estate planning workshops Wednesday, July 19th at 2 o'clock and 6:30 in the evening. And then on Saturday, July 22nd at 10 o'clock in the morning.
And then like the most recent, the more specialized workshops, like you said, there's a lot of folks on vacation right now, but any more planned specialized workshops coming up?
Yes, we have several more starting again this fall.
Okay. So keep watching. And where do you guys post your schedule for your workshops, right?
That's online at coloradoestateplan.com, or you can call our office at 719-520-1474.
Always love when you come in, Catherine. You bring such great information and so helpful, and I appreciate
Thanks for having
it.
me.
And I know it probably wasn't a fun topic. I don't know. We were like trying to be like, oh, plan your funeral, but really, plan your funeral.
Yeah, take care of it and then go enjoy your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Catherine Hammond, Hammond Law Group. Thank you so much. Coming up tomorrow, we'll talk with the folks from Colorado Springs Business Journal on the Extra on KRDO News Radio.